I am a 39M who has been married to my wife, Helen, 37F, for the past 6 years. I believe our relationship began under very complicated circumstances, something that will be important in our present scenario. Helen and I met while working at a job, night shift, as paramedics. Feeling immediately enthralled by her compassionate and strong behavior, I maintained personal space because she was married at the time. Helen's marriage was already on the rocks when we met. Her ex-husband, Jimmy, 40M, was a policeman with a drinking problem. She discussed the troubles at home with me, especially their son Ryan, who was 10 years old at the time. The eccentric behavior shown by Jimmy and his frequent disappearances started to take a toll on the lives of the family members. It wasn't long after we met, maybe a year or so, before Helen and Jimmy decided to separate. It was a dirty separation, if there ever was one, because Jimmy kept accusing Helen of being unfaithful, which wasn't true. And in fact, he made a big deal about using Ryan as leverage against her. This whole situation devastated her, particularly seeing that it was starting to take a lot out of Ryan. She requested a transfer to day shift to be more available for him. Helen and I became very close during this period. I was there for her, covering for her shifts whenever possible, so she could sort out family issues. Indeed, it was 6 months after the divorce that our relationship finally turned romantic. I sensed this right from the outset, that having a person with a child would bring its problems, however did not expect this. Ryan was 12 when Helen and I started dating, and he held me responsible for his parents not being back together. After my attempts to reach out to him, he became hostile to me. I still remember clearly the first dinner at Helen's house after we began dating. I had brought Ryan a model airplane kit, knowing he liked aviation. He took one look at it, said, "I don't want your stupid toy," and stormed off to his room. Helen apologized profusely, although her eyes told of pain and frustration. Ryan's behavior only escalated as time went on. There was constant acting out, breaking things in our home, yelling at us, and disobeying any rule that we had set up against this. One really bad incident happened when Ryan was 14. Helen and I had planned a weekend away. It would be our first vacation. We came home to find Ryan had thrown a party, trashed the house, and stolen money from Helen's emergency fund. Helen had an excuse for his everything. He was just having a hard time adjusting. She put him into some therapy, but it didn't seem to help much. The therapist suggested family counseling, but Ryan refused to participate, and neither would Jimmy. Things were made even worse by Jimmy himself. He would let Ryan do really bad things and would even undermine our authority when he was staying with him. We later learned that Jimmy had been doing lots of talking with Ryan, that I was trying to replace him in the family, and that Helen loved me more than him. This furthered the resentment he harbored and made it difficult for me to build a relationship with the boy. Things only got worse from there. By the time Ryan turned 16, he had taken stealing my car and going out with his friends for a joyride. Unsurprisingly, he then proceeded to crash it into a tree. Miraculously, none of them was seriously hurt, but the car was a total wreck. I was in the mood to report it to the police, but Helen would not hear of it. She claimed if I did so, it would devastate Ryan's future. This I did reluctantly, but made it clear that unless Ryan agreed to our rules and to show some respect, he was no longer welcome in our house. This created a very big gap between Helen and me. She could not understand why I could not forgive her son, and I could not understand why she was constantly enabling her son's life-destroying behavior. We separated for a while, and I moved out to a small apartment. It was during this separation that we found out Helen was pregnant. The news of my pregnancy was a mixed feeling. On one part, it made me elated to be a father. At the same time, it stung me from inside the heart because it became a big issue in my head to relieve myself from this additional responsibility of a child in this troublesome relation. After some long conversation and promising to each other to rebuild our bond, we decided to marry and give another chance to this marriage only for the sake of the child. Our daughter, Lily, was born 2 years ago. The day she was born was both the happiest and most stressful day of my life. Helen had a very hard labor, and there were some quite disturbing times struggling through it when we were not quite sure if we were going to lose either her or the baby. But in the end, both pulled through, and holding Lily for the first time was a moment I'll never forget. These last 20 or so years with Lily in our lives have been glorious but have also shown new challenges. Now 20, Ryan has been insisting on becoming part of Lily's life. He says his way of life has totally changed and he wants to be a good elder brother, but his past deeds portray him differently. As a matter of fact, he was in juvenile detention when Lily was born because he defaced his school. He didn't even bother to get in touch with Helen until 3 months after he had been thrown out, and since then, he has been trying to be involved, but they are always these fits and starts which, more often than not, are when he needs money or a roof over his head for a while. Last month, we were planning Lily's second birthday party. It was to be an intimate gathering with close family and friends. We had rented a small petting zoo for the backyard, knowing how much Lily loves animals. Helen's brother, Tom, asked if Ryan could come. I immediately said no. Ryan hasn't changed at all. He is still living with his dad, he doesn't have a job, and from what I've heard, he's been in and out of trouble with the law. The last time he visited, which was about 6 months ago, he came in high and even had a shouting match with Helen because she had refused to give him some money. Helen wasn't best pleased with my decision thereupon, and I suppose Ryan does deserve the chance to get to know his sister. Except, I can't quite forget all the madness and hurt he inflicted on the family. I can't bring myself to trust him where Lily is concerned, nor do I want to take the chance of him ruining her special day. The party went on as usual without Ryan, and Lily enjoyed every moment of it. There were baby goats there to fuss over, patting away at milk bowls or laughing at their games. But tension persisted in the background. Helen's family dropped pointed questions about Ryan's whereabouts, and I could literally see the pain in Helen's face each time someone asked. Helen and me had a huge row after the party. She accused me of being unforgiving and said I was forcing her to choose between her children. I argued that I was just trying to protect our daughter and create a stable environment for her. This argument has been going on for weeks now. Helen's family pretty sure I'm being too hard and not allowing Ryan another chance to redeem himself. They say that family should come first, and by me excluding Ryan, that I'm not giving Lily a chance to have a relationship with her brother. But my family is in full support. They have seen firsthand the toll that Ryan's behavior has taken on not only Helen but me over the years. My sister, who happens to be a child psychologist, also has concerns about exposing Lily to Ryan's unpredictable behavior at such a young age. Helen and I have been arguing about this nonstop. She thinks I'm being unfair, holding into old grudges. I feel like the only one who thinks about Lily. Our marriage, potentially under considerable stress, is now feeling the impact. I love Helen, and I so much want our marriage to work. But I also feel so responsible about how we can protect Lily. Am I an asshole for trying to keep my stepson from my daughter's birthday party? Shouldn't I allow Ryan back into my daughter's life as soon as it's proven that he has changed for the better and realized his mistake for good, beyond forever? Update 1: It has been a month since my original post, and a lot has happened. First off, thank you for everyone's responses. I can't believe how helpful it really was to put things into perspective and realize that, yes, while the situation is valid, I need to handle it in a very different way. But going through the comments, I realized that although I was not wrong with my feelings of accountability toward my family and Lily, a serious discussion with Helen had to take place regarding our family relations. So, there we were on a weekend away to really hash things out. My parents took up the responsibility of watching Lily, and the two of us spent a night in a small rented cabin, way back in the mountains, away from all distractions. The first night was tense. Years of repressed issues just broke loose. Helen admitted that she has been coddling Ryan all this time out of the guilt. She thought that the problems he'd been having were because of the divorce, and she knew it was her fault for it. And she accepted that if she's just patient enough, eventually, Ryan would be the one to change. Helen recalled one instance with his son, Ryan, when he was a child, though, before the divorce. He'd been darned by the majority of teachers often enough for interfering with his classmates' business and into quite a lot of school fights. She got a call from the principal that she needs to fetch him. By the time she got there, she found Ryan huddled up in the nurse's office, bawling his eyes out. He told her that he had heard her and Jimmy fighting the night before and thought it was all his fault. Helen said that moment has haunted her ever since, making her feel like she failed as a mother. I began to open up, so I shared from a few of my fears and frustrations. I told Helen I had been having these horrible nightmares since Lily was born in which I would witness Ryan hurting her, even taking her away. I said part of my resistance to Ryan being in Lily's life seemed to come from my own insecurities about not being Lily's real father and fearing Ryan might somehow try to push me out of her life. We cried, yelled, but most of all, listened to one another. And by the end of the weekend, for once in years, we both felt like we heard each other and understood. So, we decided. If this was going to work, and Ryan was going to be a part of Lily's life, there had to be real and consistent change. Here are the conditions. Ryan has to get a job or go to school. He has to attend family therapy. He has to apologize for what he's done in the past and try to make amends for part of it. For example, purchase Marcia a new car to replace the one he totaled. He has to follow our rules in our household. He has to take a commitment to and stay sober. He has to be amenable to random drug screens. After returning home, Helen called Ryan and at that time presented him with these terms. But as is to be expected, his response was less than stellar. He accused us of acting unfair and trying to take over his life. He said he did not need to prove anything in order to see his sister. The truth is, that reaction of his did help Helen see things from my point of view. She realized that Ryan isn't really interested in being a good brother to Lily, he just wanted access to her on his terms. A few days later, however, the unexpected came into the picture. Ryan called her back. His voice was shaking, and he sounded totally different from the angry, defensive Ryan we'd been so used to. He said he'd been thinking about what we had said, that he realized he did want to change and could we meet to talk things over. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in town for lunch. After minutes of sitting and wait, we could hardly recognize Ryan. He had obviously just come from a haircutting session, dressed up in a nice button-up shirt and slacks, completely contrasting his usual scruffy self. He looked nervous yet determined. All the while talking, Ryan kept saying the kind of things he had never spoken about. He was telling me how unutterably angry and wounded he had been when his parents divorced and how he thought he would be replaced when I came along. He said he ran away to get attention and punish his mother for moving on. He also shared that he'd recently had a wake-up call. One of his friends from his rebellious days had ended up in serious legal trouble, facing years in prison for drug charges. Seeing his friend in handcuffs, being led away to jail, really drove home for Ryan that he was headed down the same treacherous path. Ryan said he was ready to make changes. He'd applied for a job at a local warehouse and was thinking about taking some classes at the community college. He also agreed to start therapy, both individual and family sessions. It surprised me most when Ryan brought out a small notebook. He had actually written down every instance he could remember of causing trouble or hurting us. He faced them one by one, apologizing for each incident. When it came to the car accident, he reached into his pocket and gave me an envelope. It was a check made out to me for $500. It wasn't even a dent in the damages, but that was all the money he had saved up. He said he would keep making payments until the debt was paid. While I appreciated the sentiment behind his words and actions, I was quick to point out that it would take consistent action on our part to trust him around Lily. Ryan nodded his head and said he was willing to do the work. In the end, we left on a cautiously optimistic note. Helen was happy that Ryan seemed willing to change, and I was glad that we had clear expectations in place. It's still early days, so I'm cautious. But for the first time in years, I'm beginning to think there might be a way through, out the other side, for our family. We even set an appointment for our first family therapy meeting, Tuesday, that Ryan has already gone for. He has started his job down at the warehouse. We have a lot of hard work ahead, and I know there will be setbacks and challenges, but just looking at the relief on Helen's face and the determined look in Ryan's gives me hope. I'll keep you all posted about how things move along. Update 2. It has been almost 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to update everybody with regard to how things have gone. So far, Ryan has been surprisingly consistent with the conditions we laid down. He has been working at the warehouse for the past 2 months now, has even gone to the extent of calling Helen to say what a great worker Ryan was. I guess he never missed a shift and often signed up for more hours. That really takes the wind out of my sails, in a good way. We then began our twice-a-month family therapy sessions. It's hard, it delves into some hard to reach places of his and my resentment, but he shows up, puts in the work, and really engages more than he ever has before. The most amazing and remarkable revelation took place the day Ryan opened up with his relationship with his father, Jimmy. It turned out that for years, it was Jimmy who was feeding Ryan's resentment against me and Helen. He said that Helen had chosen me over Ryan and that I intended to place him with the family. Well, the rest of Ryan's hostile behaviors toward us could be explained by all of this. In one particularly emotion-laden session, Ryan related that in the seconds after Lily had been born, Jimmy had said to him that with a new family, Helen wouldn't have any need for Ryan anymore. Ryan admitted that much of his recent behavior had been fueled by this concern about being replaced. Ryan perceived the unhealthy behavior of his father and, therefore, decided to cut back on his visiting of Jimmy. That really was a big, huge move on Ryan's part, and has he been in quite a reflective state since then. He's just been living with his aunt, who happens to be the sister of Jimmy, rather than his dad, and that seems like a much fresher environment for him. Touching on the payment of the car that Ryan crashed, he has really been honest with making amends. Maybe not able to pay much each month, but the fact that he is showing himself responsible has counted a lot. He is also helping around the house with the repairs and maintenance things I've been putting off. All of these changes being positive for us, Helen and I agreed we should introduce Ryan to Lily. We set up a short visit to our house. Ryan was visibly nervous arriving, clutching a stuffed animal he'd bought for Lily. To arrive at the front door, he shook his hands nervously before even saying hello and knelt down to Lily's level to introduce himself. Watching them interact was interesting. Ryan was rather awkward at first, not really knowing how to talk to a toddler, but Lily is friendly and warmed up to him quickly. She couldn't stop looking at his tattoos, and she kept asking him if he'd draw on her arm too. The way she would read to him, only to have him read back to her by the end of one of the visits, sitting on his lap, it was a moment I never thought I would see. And, well, my feelings were mixed. Good Ryan, able to be tender, patient with Lily, yet on the other hand, there was this jealousy and fear that I couldn't avoid. What if, after all, Lily ended up thinking her cool big brother was better than me? The moment Lily went to sleep, Ryan started thanking us for having given him this chance. He explained to us that, in some ways, he was pretty nervous about meeting Lily since he had been afraid that she wouldn't like him or he wouldn't know how to be good for her. But he said that meeting her had made him even more determined to stay on the right path. Since then, we have allowed a bit more time for them to see each other, but it's always done under supervision and never really for a very long time. Ryan has followed our house rule accordingly and honestly seems so fond of Lily. He has even begun saving money to buy her a special gift during her next birthday. It is not, however, always rosy. We still quarrel, and ironically, those moments remind me so much of Ryan's originality. Last week, he got angry when Helen would not let him take Lily to the park all by himself. He raised his voice but then quickly caught himself, apologized, and went for a walk to cool off. In all reality, it was a small incident but showed both how far he's come and how far he still has to go. I'm still very much on the lookout but, at the same time, so much more optimistic. This is the first time it's looked like I could potentially have a true family in years. We can only go one day at a time, but so far, so good. Update 3: The past 6 months have elapsed, and the current status of our family is as follows. Ryan was on his way to making it. He is still working at the warehouse and just got promoted to the position of team leader. He is also taking some courses at the community college on business management. It has been a real challenge for Ryan balancing making a living, studies, and taking care of his family, but he has been able to pull it through to date. The family therapy session last week went great. The discussions here and there had been rough but led to a better understanding on all sides. Ryan has been working on anger issues and learning to communicate in healthier ways. Helen and I have also been working on ours, particularly how we co-parent and present a united front. One session that stands out took place when we were discussing the car accident that had happened a couple of years ago. Ryan only just opened up and told us what had made this come about. He was having an exceptionally low day, by having failed a test at school and then hearing over the telephone, Jimmy, bad-mouthing me. He took my car, planning to go to his friend's house but instead running into some other kids who were going to go joyriding. Ryan broke down as he described the second of the crash. I thought I was gonna die, and my biggest regret was I'd never get to tell Mom and Dad how sorry I was. That was really touching. It made me find a different Ryan. Now there have been lots of changes with the development of the relationship Ryan has kept up with Lily. Now he comes by pretty much every other day, and Lily is always all animated when her big brother comes. Ryan has really acted like a big brother. He reads to her, plays games with her, but his latest mission is to help us make our home safe for Lily. Last week, he spent an entire afternoon helping Lily build a pillow fort in the living room. Seeing them giggle together as they emerged from their castle was a moment I never thought I'd experience. One incident really showed how much Ryan has changed. Lily had a minor accident while playing in the backyard when Ryan was watching her. She fell and scraped her knee. Instead of panicking or hiding it from us, as Ryan might have in the past, he was very calm in cleaning her knee with bandages and comforting her and then at once telling us what had happened. He took responsibility and handled the situation maturely. It was a small thing, but that really meant so much to me, seeing him step up like that. As for Ryan's dad, Jimmy, things have been tense. There have been a few times he hasn't been all right with Ryan's decreased contact with him. He has tried to stir trouble. He showed up here on a couple of occasions, unwanted, demanding to see Lily. We've had to firm up our boundaries, and Ryan has supported us in this. It's been really hard but he's done it very consistently. It was Ryan who told Jimmy to leave and called him a cab when he showed up drunk at our house last month. Not everything goes perfectly. Take last month, for example. Ryan missed a therapy appointment because he overslept. He worked a double shift the day before, and he was so mad at himself about missing the appointment. By now, he was finding it easier to talk to us, to face an issue like this, and work on making changes so we can set up his schedule in a way that works for him. Helen and I have been working on our relationship too. We started setting aside one night each week for a date night, which we haven't done since before Lily was born. It's been great to really check in as a couple, just us two co-parents. We even started talking about maybe renewing our vows next year to celebrate how far we've come as a family. All in all, not perfect, but much better than a year ago. Ryan is gaining some ground and is really looking like he may stand late to turn out to be a fairly good young adult. Helen and I are back on the same page somehow, co-parenting, communicating for once. And Lily is blooming with this bigger, better family. We're planning a vacation with the family next month, our first with him. We're going to rent out a cabin by a lake, and Ryan has loved the idea. He's been looking up things in the area that are kid-friendly, and he even saved his money to buy Lily her first fishing pole. I suppose I am cautiously optimistic about the future of our family together. That there is still a lot of stuff to face out there and heaven knows, we will. Just having seen those positive changes in Ryan, the delight on Lily's face when she is with her big brother, and the relief in Helen's eyes when we are all together peacefully makes it more than worth it. We soldier on day by day, celebrating small wins and taking lessons from each stumble. It's been such a long, hard walk, but I'm starting to think we have a shot at making it as a family in the end.